People always ask me two questions. The first is whether I really earned the Navy Cross. The second is how a grown woman managed to sue me over a bottle of grape juice. The answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second is, well, that's a much longer story. By the year 2189, humanity had become one of the loudest, most unpredictable members of the Galactic Alliance. Every species agreed on one thing: humans were impossible to understand. We laughed during disasters, made jokes at funerals, flirted during emergencies, and somehow turned near-death experiences into stand-up comedy. I happened to be an expert at all four. Before becoming a comedian, I had spent 12 years serving in the United Earth Navy. During the Battle of Kelios Station, my rescue team pulled nearly 300 civilians out of a collapsing orbital habitat. Half of them were human. The other half belonged to species that couldn't even breathe Earth's atmosphere. That mission earned me the Navy Cross. Personally, I thought surviving my mother-in-law's cooking deserved an even bigger medal. Military retirement sounded peaceful in theory. In reality, I discovered civilian life was terrifying. Nobody shot plasma rifles at me anymore. Instead, people expected me to understand taxes, apartment leases, and social media algorithms. So I became a comedian. Turns out audiences loved hearing military stories. Especially the embarrassing ones. Like accidentally saluting an alien ambassador who was actually their equivalent of a janitor. Or the time an entire platoon got chased across a moon by fluffy creatures that looked like oversized kittens but weighed nearly 800 pounds. My career wasn't exactly exploding. Most nights I performed in tiny clubs where the audience numbered somewhere between 12 and 15 people, including the bartender. Still, laughter paid enough to cover rent. Barely. Thankfully, I wasn't facing life alone. Her name was Lyra. She came from the Eleutheri, a species famous throughout the galaxy for diplomacy, elegance, and emotional intelligence. They were also absolutely hopeless at understanding sarcasm. The first time I joked that I was dying of embarrassment, she rushed me to an emergency medical center. The doctors couldn't stop laughing. She spent 3 days apologizing. Eventually, she learned one important lesson about humans. If we were smiling while saying something ridiculous, we probably weren't being serious. Probably. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with silver blue skin that shimmered under sunlight and glowing violet eyes that somehow became even brighter whenever she laughed. Which happened often. Mostly because of me. I still don't understand why humans intentionally embarrass themselves. She said one morning as we prepared for my brother's annual family barbecue. Because embarrassment is cheaper than therapy. She blinked. That somehow explains your entire species. I've been told. She kissed my cheek before adjusting the collar of my casual jacket. Underneath rested my Navy Cross. I didn't wear it often. Only during military ceremonies or family gatherings where my father insisted I should. Your medal is crooked, she whispered. It survived orbital bombardment. It still deserves respect. She carefully straightened it. Every time she touched that medal, she looked at it with quiet admiration. Among the Eleutheri, warriors who protected civilians were considered sacred figures. Military honors weren't decorations. They were promises. That someone had chosen strangers over themselves. I never felt comfortable being treated like a hero. I was just lucky enough to come home. Others weren't. We climbed into the shuttle and headed toward my brother's suburban neighborhood outside New Houston. The barbecue looked exactly like every previous family gathering. Children running everywhere. Music playing too loudly. Neighbors pretending they weren't watching. My older brother Ethan greeted us with a hug. You made it. I heard free food. You heard correctly. Then came his wife, Vanessa. If jealousy were an Olympic sport, she'd have enough gold medals to sink a cargo ship. She smiled exactly the way sharks probably smiled before eating tourists. Oh, look who's here, she said sweetly. Our little comedian. And our favorite professional lawsuit waiting to happen. I answered. She laughed. Not because it was funny. Because she thought she could outplay me. She couldn't. Vanessa had one remarkable talent. She believed absolutely everything expensive was automatically better. Especially imported alien products. Today's obsession sat proudly in the middle of the dining table. 6 bottles of Eleutheri Royal Crystal Wine. Each bottle cost nearly 2,000 Alliance credits. She announced the price every 7 minutes. You have to appreciate the mineral notes. She told the guests dramatically. The flavor develops differently depending on your emotional state. I leaned toward Lyra. Does it really? She looked confused. It's fermented fruit. I thought so. Vanessa disappeared inside the house to answer a call. An idea entered my brain. History has proven that whenever that happens, civilizations suffer. I quietly carried the expensive bottles into the kitchen. Then I poured every single drop into empty storage containers. I replaced the contents with ordinary grape juice from Ethan's refrigerator. Exactly the same color. Exactly the same smell. Close enough. I returned every bottle to the table. Mission accomplished. A few minutes later, Vanessa proudly filled everyone's glasses. She lifted hers dramatically. Noticed the complex balance. Everyone nodded. Incredible. So sophisticated. I detect cosmic citrus. Another guest frowned thoughtfully. I sense volcanic stardust. Someone else claimed they could taste ancient asteroid minerals. I nearly inhaled a dinner roll trying not to laugh. Lyra took one careful sip. Then another. She looked around the table. Finally, she asked the most innocent question imaginable. Why is everyone pretending this refrigerator grape juice tastes expensive? Silence. Absolute. Beautiful. Silence. Every head slowly turned toward their glass. Vanessa froze. Ethan sniffed his drink. My uncle tasted it again. The neighbor quietly whispered, "Wait, this is grape juice." I couldn't hold it anymore. I burst into laughter so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. Even Ethan started laughing. Then everyone else joined in. Everyone. Except Vanessa. Her face turned bright red. She looked at me with the expression of someone mentally calculating prison sentences. You did this. I prefer the term social experiment. You humiliated me. I exposed grape juice. She pointed a shaking finger at me. This isn't over. Honestly. I thought she meant next Thanksgiving. I had no idea she meant federal court.
Three days after the barbecue, I was sitting in a tiny comedy club trying to convince 14 people that humans invented coffee because sleep was too optimistic. The audience laughed. Well, 11 of them laughed. 2 were asleep. One was an alien whose species laughed only once every 6 months. I'll take those odds. I had just finished my set when my wrist communicator buzzed. Official United Earth Judicial Notice. I frowned. Probably jury duty, I muttered. Lyra looked over my shoulder. You don't look happy. No one has ever smiled while opening government mail. I tapped the holographic envelope. A dozen legal documents exploded into the air. The title alone nearly made me choke. Vanessa Carter versus Daniel Carter. Claim. Intentional emotional distress. Public humiliation. Reputational damages. Psychological suffering. Social ridicule. Compensation requested. 5 million Alliance credits. I blinked twice. Then 3 times. Finally, I looked at Lyra. Please tell me human law translated incorrectly. She carefully read every page. No. What part? All of it. I started laughing. Not a polite chuckle. The kind of uncontrollable laughter that makes people think you're having a medical emergency. The bartender walked over. You okay? My sister-in-law is suing me. He nodded sympathetically. Bad. Because she drank grape juice. He stared. What? Long story. He quietly handed me another drink. You're gonna need this. Word spread surprisingly fast. By the next afternoon, every comedian in New Houston had heard about the Great Grape Juice lawsuit. Some thought it was a publicity stunt. Others assumed it would be dismissed immediately. Even my former commanding officer called. Son. Yes, Admiral? I've survived 3 wars. Congratulations. I still don't understand how you managed to get sued over fruit. Honestly, neither do I. The hearing arrived 2 weeks later. The courthouse looked more like a luxury hotel than a government building. Hover cameras floated outside. News drones buzzed overhead. Apparently, the media loved ridiculous lawsuits almost as much as celebrity divorces. As Lyra and I walked toward the entrance, she gently reached for my hand. Are you nervous? I've jumped from burning spacecraft. That wasn't my question. A little. She smiled softly. You always become funny when you're frightened. Defense mechanism. It is one of my favorite human features. She kissed my cheek. I believe in you. Inside the courtroom, Vanessa looked as though she were attending a royal wedding. Designer suit. Perfect hair. Enough jewelry to fund a small moon colony. She smiled at us with theatrical confidence. Her lawyer stood beside her carrying nearly 20 digital folders. I whispered to Lyra. I pranked her with grape juice. Correct. Why does her lawyer have more paperwork than my military discharge? I am beginning to understand why humans fear lawyers. The courtroom doors opened. Everyone stood. Judge Malcolm Hargrove entered wearing an expression that suggested smiling was illegal. He had built his reputation on dramatic rulings and television appearances. Some judges wanted justice. Judge Hargrove wanted ratings. He sat heavily. Be seated. His eyes immediately scanned the room. They paused when they reached my jacket. More specifically, the Navy Cross resting above my heart. His expression changed. Not admiration. Annoyance. Court began. Vanessa's attorney launched into what sounded less like a legal argument and more like the trailer for an apocalypse movie. My client has suffered irreversible emotional devastation. The judge nodded seriously. Continue. Her reputation has been destroyed. Another nod. She no longer trusts beverages. The judge actually wrote something down. I leaned toward my attorney. Is he taking notes about juice? My lawyer sighed. I wish I were joking. Vanessa took the witness stand. Within 30 seconds, she was crying. I can't attend dinner parties anymore. Why not? Asked her lawyer. I'm afraid someone will replace my drinks. Gasps echoed dramatically. I looked around. One juror actually rolled his eyes. Another quietly rubbed his temples. The lawyer continued. Did this prank affect your mental health? Yes. How? I inspect every beverage 3 times before drinking. Someone behind me snorted. The judge slammed his gavel. Order. Vanessa continued. My social life has been ruined. My attorney stood. Permission to cross-examine. Granted. He smiled politely. Mrs. Carter, after the incident, how many social events have you attended? She hesitated. 32. So, your social life ended by becoming busier? Silence. And according to your public social media account, he projected dozens of holographic images. You hosted 3 wine tasting parties this month. More silence. The courtroom began chuckling. Vanessa glared at me as though I had personally invented grapes. Finally, it was my turn. I walked calmly to the witness stand. State your occupation. I'm a comedian. Previous occupation? United Earth Navy. The judge interrupted. Just answer the questions asked. Yes, Your Honor. The prosecutor folded his arms. So, you admit you intentionally embarrassed Mrs. Carter? I intended to expose fake wine experts. Several people laughed. The judge frowned. This is not a comedy club. I noticed. The food is much worse. Even one of the security officers covered his mouth. The prosecutor tried again. Did you replace expensive alien wine with ordinary grape juice? I upgraded the honesty. More laughter. The judge slammed the gavel harder. I said order. His face had turned bright red.
He stared directly at my chest.
Then his eyes narrowed. The metal. The room became quiet. You'll remove it. I blinked. I'm sorry? Your Navy Cross.
He pointed at it.
Remove it immediately. My attorney stood. Your Honor, my client always wears. I don't care. His voice echoed through the courtroom. That decoration may emotionally influence the jury. The silence afterward felt endless. Every veteran in the gallery stiffened. An elderly Marine slowly shook his head. Across the room, a young Army captain looked genuinely shocked. Lyra whispered softly, "Why would he ask that?" I answered without taking my eyes off the judge. "I honestly don't know." The judge crossed his arms. "Remove it now." For a long moment, I simply stood there. Not because I wanted to argue, because that medal wasn't jewelry. It represented friends who never made it home. I slowly unclipped the Navy Cross. Without a word, I placed it into Lyra's waiting hands. She accepted it with both palms, bowing her head in the ancient Eleutheri gesture reserved for honored protectors. Several alien spectators copied the gesture instinctively. The judge looked irritated rather than respectful. "Now," he said, "we may continue." He never noticed the tiny recording drone floating silently near the courtroom ceiling. Its owner smiled, because every single word had just been broadcast in perfect high definition. The video reached the public before I even arrived home.
I didn't know it yet.
I was sitting on my apartment balcony wearing sweatpants, eating leftover barbecue ribs, and wondering whether replacing wine with grape juice technically counted as my greatest professional achievement. Lyra stepped outside carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to me. "You should probably look at your communicator." I was hoping the internet had forgotten me. She smiled. "The internet has done the opposite." I unlocked the screen. It froze for nearly 10 seconds. Not because it was broken, because it was trying to load over 90 million notifications. That can't be right. Lyra looked over my shoulder. "I believe humans call this going viral." The first video began playing automatically. There I was standing in court. Then the judge's voice echoed through millions of speakers. "Remove that medal immediately. It may emotionally influence the jury." The clip ended with me quietly handing the Navy Cross to Lyra. Below it, 38 million views. Uploaded 8 hours ago. Comments were arriving faster than my communicator could refresh. Veterans from every branch of the United Earth military were posting messages. "He earned that medal. Respect isn't optional." Disgraceful courtroom behavior. Then something unexpected happened. Alien military organizations started responding. The Varkon Defense Fleet issued an official statement. Among civilized worlds, honors earned through sacrifice are never treated as courtroom accessories. The Eleutheri Peace Guard released another. Warrior decorations represent lives protected. They deserve dignity, regardless of species. Within hours, dozens of governments had commented. Apparently insulting one retired Navy veteran was terrible diplomacy. I kept scrolling. Then I reached the memes. Humans, as always, handled outrage with comedy. One picture showed the judge pointing at the sun. Caption: "Remove that. It's influencing daylight." Another displayed an entire Christmas tree. Too many decorations. Someone might become emotional. One of my favorites showed an alien battleship covered in medals. Warning label beneath it read, "Judge approved maximum emotional damage." Even Lyra laughed. She rarely laughed at internet humor. I finally understand. Understand what? When humans become angry, they become comedians. Exactly. By lunchtime, every major comedy show in the Alliance had turned the judge into their opening joke. One late-night host walked onto the stage wearing 15 fake medals. He looked directly into the camera. "I'd remove these, but they're the only things holding my suit together." The audience exploded. Another comedian entered carrying a carton of grape juice. He whispered dramatically, "Careful, everyone. This beverage has already claimed 1 lawsuit." Across the galaxy, people who had never met me were laughing at the same absurd story. Military podcasts invited historians. Legal experts criticized the ruling. Retired admirals defended the tradition of wearing earned decorations. Even people who thought my prank had been childish admitted the judge had crossed a line. Meanwhile, Judge Hargrove decided the smartest possible response was to hold a press conference. That turned out to be his second worst decision. His first was telling me to remove the Navy Cross. Standing behind a podium, he adjusted his tie, and cleared his throat. My courtroom maintains complete neutrality. A reporter immediately asked, "Then why single out a military decoration?" "It could create sympathy." Another reporter raised her hand. "Did you ask the woman suing over grape juice to remove her diamond necklace because wealth creates sympathy?" He blinked.
No.
"So only military service creates unfair influence." He opened his mouth, closed it again. Somewhere on the internet, thousands of meme creators simultaneously whispered, "We've got him." Within an hour, the interview had generated another avalanche of jokes. Someone edited dramatic music behind every awkward pause. Another added subtitles claiming the judge was secretly terrified of medals. One viral animation showed him fleeing from a Boy Scout wearing merit badges. My personal favorite featured a toddler receiving a participation ribbon. The judge screamed and jumped through a window. I laughed so hard coffee came out of my nose. "I think humans are broken," Lyra observed. "We're definitely bent." Then my communicator rang again. "Unknown number." I answered. "Hello. Is this Daniel Carter?" "Depends who's asking. I'm the producer for Galactic Laugh Network." "Oh. We'd like you to appear on tonight's live show." "I've got a court case." "Exactly." Before I could answer, another call arrived. Then another. Comedy clubs, podcasts, veteran organizations, interview requests, book publishers, streaming platforms. One producer actually offered to rename an entire comedy special, "Justice Served with Grape Juice." By evening, my calendar looked like a military invasion plan. I stared at it in disbelief. Yesterday, I was performing for 14 people. Lyra wrapped her arms around me from behind. Today, an entire galaxy wants to hear your story. I don't know why. She rested her head against my shoulder. Because you did not become angry. You laughed. You stayed respectful. My people admire strength. Humans admire courage. But everyone admires dignity. I turned toward her. You always know what to say. I have been studying humans. And you hide pain behind jokes. I smiled. Guilty. She gently reached into her bag and removed my Navy cross. She had polished it until it gleamed. I promised to protect this. You did. She carefully pinned it back onto my jacket. Then, without caring that news drones were hovering outside our apartment building, she kissed me. Not a quick kiss. The kind that makes the rest of the universe disappear. The cameras caught everything. Within an hour, that moment became almost as popular as the courtroom clip itself. Headlines appeared everywhere. Alien diplomat defends decorated veteran. Love across the stars wins hearts. The couple everyone is talking about. For the first time since the lawsuit began, I forgot about Vanessa. I forgot about the judge. I forgot about the courtroom. Standing there with Lyra, I realized something far more important than winning a case. Some battles weren't won with arguments. Some were won by refusing to surrender your dignity. Unfortunately for Judge Hargrove, the biggest battle of his career was only beginning. Because while the internet was still laughing, federal investigators had quietly started asking one simple question. Why had the judge been so determined to help my sister-in-law in the first place? The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Apparently, when millions of humans, dozens of alien governments, and several retired admirals all started asking the same question at once, even bureaucracies found motivation. 2 weeks after the courtroom video exploded across the Galactic Alliance, federal investigators walked into Judge Hargrove's office, carrying sealed warrants. The news channels covered every second. One reporter whispered dramatically into the camera. Sources confirm investigators are examining allegations of judicial misconduct, improper communications, and abuse of authority. Another added, officials refuse to comment on whether additional charges are being considered. I watched the broadcast from my apartment while eating cereal. Lyra looked at me. Is it normal for humans to eat breakfast while watching major legal scandals? It depends. On what? If the scandal involves someone who deserved it. She nodded thoughtfully. I continue learning. Investigators soon uncovered something the judge never expected anyone to find. Private messages, meeting records, financial disclosures.
Nothing outrageous by themselves.
But together they painted a picture nobody wanted to see. The judge had been communicating with Vanessa's attorney long before the hearing. Nothing directly instructed him how to rule, but the conversations were enough to trigger ethics violations. His carefully polished reputation cracked overnight. The Judicial Review Council suspended him pending a full investigation. Television networks immediately canceled his weekly legal commentary show. His political supporters quietly disappeared. Sponsors issued polite statements filled with phrases like, "inconsistent with our values." Translated into normal human language, they were running for the exits. Meanwhile, Vanessa's confidence evaporated. Her attorney requested a settlement meeting.
My lawyer looked at me.
"They're offering to withdraw the lawsuit if you agree not to countersue." I laughed. "That's generous. What do you want to do?" I thought for a moment. Then I shrugged. "I don't need revenge. I already got the funniest story of my career." My lawyer blinked. "You really are a comedian." The judge's replacement reviewed every filing in the case. The hearing lasted less than 40 minutes. After reading the complaint, watching the original barbecue video, and reviewing the testimony, she adjusted her glasses. "I have reached a decision." The courtroom became silent. "This lawsuit lacks legal merit."
Dismissed.
She looked directly at Vanessa. Civil courts exist to resolve genuine disputes, not personal embarrassment resulting from practical jokes. A few spectators smiled. The judge wasn't finished. She turned toward me. "And for the record, this court recognizes the honorable military service of all veterans. Decorations earned through sacrifice deserve respect." She nodded toward my Navy Cross. "You may continue wearing it with pride." For just a second, the room remained quiet. Then the veterans seated in the gallery stood together. No cheering, no shouting, just respectful applause. It meant more than I could explain. I glanced toward Lyra. Her glowing violet eyes were suspiciously wet.
She squeezed my hand.
"I believe humans call this justice." "I think you're right." Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. Microphones floated through the air. "Daniel, how do you feel? Any message for the former judge?" I smiled. "Actually, I hope he eventually learns the difference between authority and respect." Another reporter asked, "What about your sister-in-law?" I chuckled. "I hope she never has to drink grape juice again." The crowd burst into laughter. Even several reporters couldn't keep straight faces. Vanessa hurried to a waiting vehicle without answering a single question. The internet immediately nicknamed her Lady Merlot. She hated it. Naturally, the nickname became permanent. Over the following months, my life changed in ways I never imagined. Comedy clubs that had ignored my emails suddenly competed for available dates. Instead of performing for 14 people, I was selling out theaters across Earth and several Alliance worlds. My new tour was called Medals and Merlot. Every performance began the same way. I walked onto the stage wearing my Navy Cross. The audience stood before I said a single word. Then I grin and say, "Relax. The judge isn't here." The laughter usually lasted a full minute. The stories became even better after that. I joked about military life, about alien misunderstandings, about family disasters, about how humanity's greatest superpower wasn't strength. It was the ability to laugh after surviving impossible situations. Alien audiences loved it. Many admitted they had never understood human humor before. Now they realized laughter wasn't disrespect. Sometimes it was resilience. Sometimes it was healing. Sometimes it was how humans reminded one another that bad days eventually became good stories. Lyra attended every performance she could. One evening, after a sold-out show on the Eleutheri homeworld, she led me onto a quiet balcony overlooking thousands of glowing crystal towers. The stars reflected across her silver-blue skin. She reached into a small velvet box. "I have learned your traditions," she said. "So have I." She smiled. "But I would rather honor mine." Inside the box wasn't a ring. It was a tiny crystal star forged from the remains of an ancient collapsed nebula, one of the highest symbols of lifelong commitment among her people. She held it toward me. "Daniel, you have spent your life protecting strangers. You make frightened people laugh. You have shown my people why humans are respected across the galaxy. Will you spend the rest of your adventures with me? For once, the comedian had no joke. I simply nodded. Yes. She laughed, slipped the crystal star into my hand, and kissed me beneath an alien sky filled with brilliant constellations. Our wedding became one of the most unusual celebrations in Alliance history. Human Marines stood beside Eleutheri honor guards. Alien musicians attempted jazz, with questionable success. My former commanding officer gave a speech that somehow included tactical advice for married life. Even my brother managed to make everyone laugh. Vanessa wasn't invited. Nobody objected. Near the end of the reception, I looked around the room. Humans, aliens, veterans, comedians, families, friends, every one of them smiling together. I touched the Navy Cross resting over my heart, not because it made me important, because it reminded me of the people who never came home. The medal had never been about prestige. It was about sacrifice. The lawsuit had tried to turn it into a prop. Instead, it reminded millions of people why honor mattered. Years later, audiences still asked me the same two questions. Did I really earn the Navy Cross?
Yes.
Did my sister-in-law really sue me over grape juice? Absolutely. And if there's one lesson humanity has taught the galaxy, it's this. Never underestimate a decorated veteran. Never underestimate an alien who believes in love. And for the sake of your legal career, never tell a comedian to remove his medal in a courtroom full of witnesses.